How the heck are everybody? I'm Fastidious. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to a hero guide and Watcher of Realms. This is a big one, guys. We are talking Pyros. Pyros has been my most wanted hero in this game for at least like 6 or 7 weeks, maybe 2+ months. In this video, we're gonna break it all down just like I always do, going over stats, skills, use cases, gearing, artifacts, so on and so on. But there's gonna be a very strong focus on the guild boss. So in a way, it's going to be a big guild boss showcase for the second half of the video, because that's where this guy is a superstar. And I think I'm gonna get into the nitty-gritty of explaining why I want him, not by just telling you, but by showing you. We're gonna do 3 different guild boss demonstrations, plus a separate demonstration within the guild boss showing off how exactly the timing of his ult works. There's a lot to get to, so let's hop on in.
Fastidious.
Fastidious.
So, first off, guys, welcome to the test server. I obviously do not have Pyros yet. So this is the test server. Let's head into the gallery and let's talk about this guy. And why not just start out with aesthetic? All right, so the way I'm thinking of it is, it's a cool design, right? But he is a bit of a creepy old dude. The way I'm thinking about it is, if Morgan is mommy, this guy is definitely uncle. All right, pretty cool though. I mean, something I want to shout out. I shouted it out in a video with Ivy way back when we talked about him. Go check that video out. We ranked all the epic lords in the game. However, if you look at this here, there's a lot of things in this game they do beautifully. There's a lot of things in this game they just overlook and they make a lot of mistakes. So this logo right here, this eye, he's an infernal lord. That is very much the symbol, the emblem, or the symbol, not the symbolum, of the Nightmare Council. Look at that. And actually, Twin Fiend, who's the legendary lord from Infernal Blast, has the exact same thing going on his staff. So clearly, what I think happened is they had that as the emblem or symbol or symbolum, if you will, of the Infernals, and they made a change, but they never changed the design, or at least the aesthetics, these hero designs. It is what it is. Overall, pretty cool. Uncle Pyros, it is. So we got to talk about who exactly this guy is. He is a lord. He's an epic lord. We have the fusion coming up this weekend. In just 2 days it begins, and I'm giddy with excitement. And he's a mage. He is very much a DPS unit. However, at least on paper. However, as you dig in, and we're going to dig in immensely, his real job is empowering DPS units. So in that way, he truly is a support. It's kind of all about having him there, lining up his ultimate, lining up the focus fire hidden within his ultimate to allow your true DPS, your infernal DPS, to shine. It really is quite complicated, and I think this is the moment that I want to unpack something. A lot of people say, Pyros has been sitting in my roster, I never built him. Oh, I built Pyros because you or Mabucket or someone said he was so good, and he actually isn't that good. He's that good. He's just very difficult to use, and there's a lot of kind of special mechanics that you have to master. So a huge part of this video is going to be getting into that. But first, stats it is. So hero details, let's bring him to max level. You can see the attack is pretty respectable for an epic mage. Mages, epic heroes in general have lower base stats. Mages do not have the highest as well. They're not the same as like fighters. They do have a bit more base stats in terms of in the attack department at least, than their marksman counterparts. But you can see he's at 3740. It is respectable. I have a sheet prepared right here for you guys, so let me pull that up right now. You can see all the mages in the game, and when you believe it, Pyros is numero uno. So 3,700, pretty respectable. But like I said, while he will put out some of his DPS, especially in content outside of the guild boss, where he is going to shine actually is in this kind of utility support role, in which he is this lord bringing together your infernal faction allies and empowering them, the Zealotus of the world and such, to do tremendous damage. But you can see numero uno, and overall for an epic mage, he's got very strong base stats. He has the 3rd highest HP of any epic mage in the game, so I'll show you that right now. You can see 8665, so only Greed and then Raiden are above him. That is important because you are going to want to make sure this guy survives, because his value is so entrenched in the utility he provides others that utility will be non-existent if he's lying dead on the battlefield. Finally, before we move on to the absolute specifics, we do have to talk about attack speed, and this will be a very natural transition into his skills. Attack speed on Pyros is essential. So not because he's got some special basic attack, as you can see, but, and this is a point I love to hammer home, the best way to have your ult come back around, to have your ultimate skill be triggered, and to generate rage from it is by spamming attacks. That is something you can control, and what you have is each character in the game has an innate value for rage regen attack when they do attacks, and Rage Regen attacked when they receive attacks. For most content, you can't control how often you're getting attacked. Certainly in the guild boss, you're not going to be getting attacked very often, but you can control how often you are doing attacks. You are performing attacks, and that will allow you to grow rage. So whatever the value is, you will get that every time you make an attack. I know I'm getting into the nitty-gritty, but it's important. Rage Regen percentage in general is just less valuable because that's just an additional multiplier that scales off of those numbers: Rage Regen, attack, and attacked. I know we're getting into the weeds, but that is important. With Pyros, you want that ult coming up as much as possible. We're really going to break it down. So the utmost importance for him is going to be attack speed and getting these intervals down pat. And then you can build some nice Rage Regen on top of him, which is super important. But that Rage Regen percentage is not scaling off anything if you're not having attacks. You need quantity to create the necessary build-up to get that ultimate happening. So as you can see, he's got an extremely average 2.6 second interval. This very much seems like the standard, like the developers were like, when in doubt, give him a 2.6 second attack interval. It's a solid base interval. It's the 4th slowest in the game. I believe it's also the 4th quickest. So it's just right there, you know? You're gonna wanna max this thing out. So you can see my testing that I've done, and shout out to Mindless YouTube, only goes up to 1.3 seconds. You can definitely get him to 1.2 seconds. I don't have the gear on the test server or my actual account to figure out exactly what that threshold is. So if that's unclear, guys, you need at least this much additional attack speed to reach the next interval. So let's say you were at 2.2 seconds, you would need then 55 additional attack speed. That's when it would go down to 2.1, so on and so on. So then to get him to 1.3 seconds, you need minimum, the threshold clears at 358 additional attack speed. I don't have the gear to get a strong number on what it is going to be to get that 1.2 second interval to knock off another 0.1 second. Certainly it's diminishing returns. That's going to cost a lot. From my testing, it's between 455 and 465 additional attacks. So it's pretty steep. However, actually getting that 358, the reason I'm going on and on about it is it's super reasonable. You're gonna put an attack speed amulet on this guy, at least for the deep into the late game. Eventually at end game, you might have such amazing substat rolls, you don't have to do that. But with that amulet and then hunting for substats, putting on a whirlwind set, maybe later on you get a warlord set, you can easily get that 358. As you see now, when we transition into our gearing, that is something we did. All right, let's move on to skills. Let's talk about Pyros' talent. So his talent actually lends itself incredibly well to the conversation we were just having with regard to attack speed. Pyros increases his attack speed by 50 per attack for 5 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. Now 6 stacks would be really nice. However, an extra 300 additional attack speed very well could be overkill. However, as I articulated, the next threshold to go from that 358 threshold at 1.3 seconds to get him down to 1.2 seconds is quite reasonable, right? You could easily get him to getting those 2 attacks off. There's additional 100 attack speed, and now you're gonna be at that 1.2 second interval. That means you're getting 6 attacks off every 5 seconds. That's super strong. If you're able to get him to those high numbers, you might even get a full 4 stacks or 5 stacks. That's an extra 200 or 250. Maybe you get him down to that 1 second interval. With him, the timing is so tight with so many comps you're gonna run for Guild Boss. It really is essential. I would also say for this talent, if you're not able to build those attack speeds, maybe you're like early mid-game or mid-game, this is gonna help you at least reach an acceptable threshold to make sure that he is cycling through his attacks very quickly and then cycling through his ults at the clip that you want him to do. Pyros' kit is confusing, and I really do not judge anyone that has struggled to understand his kit or to figure out how to best use him. I mean, I myself, as I did all my prep for this video, and it was hours of prep running Guild Boss over and over to get the timing down, big shout out to Elowyn. This is a more veteran advanced player out of Russia. He kind of took me by the hand and we just knocked this out together for a few hours. So there's a lot packed into here and it is kind of hard to decipher. Let's get into it now. Strangely enough, I do think we have to begin with the Lord skill because the Lord skill, very different than any other Lord in the game with Pyros and Twin Fiend, their Lord skills are immediately referring to their kit. So let's start there and then let's work our way into the actual skills. Increases faction allies basic attributes by 10%, completely typical of any faction Lord that's an epic. It's 15% for legendaries, 5% for rares. That's just how it works. When Lord Pyros casts the destruction command, what the heck is that? All faction allies gain penetration increase for 10 seconds. This is amazing. It ignores 30% of defense and magic resistance. Amazing thing, but how do you get that to happen when destruction command is cast? Okay, so it's when a skill is cast, that is his ultimate, and this thing is a wall of very confusing text. Let's start with the basic, then let's go to the ult, and then the ult ties directly into the passive. So the basic, so simple. Pyros is kind of an AoE damage dealing mage. However, he's just got this boring single target magic DPS on his basic attack, 110% damage when you skill it up to one enemy. It is what it is. On to the confusing stuff. Destruction Command. It is a manual ult, and that is so important because you are going to have, these timings are so tight, man. You really have to give it extra attention. When activated, increases damage by 100% for 15 seconds and marks one target in range with the highest HP at the moment to make it a prioritized attack. So he's going to be putting his sights on whoever has the highest HP. So great for bosses, great for elite. For guild boss, there's only one enemy there, so there's only one thing to target. That damage increase is upon himself, so he'll do a bit more damage, but until the very end game, you're probably not going to be able to build him as a proper damage dealer. So that part we don't really care about. Moving on. The mark lasts for 10 seconds and explodes at the end of its duration, dealing 300% AoE damage to nearby enemies. Again, we don't really care. His damage is not such a big deal until later on in the game, and even still then, it's just kind of like gravy. You might be just eking out a few extra blood, so we can kind of ignore this. And it's AoE damage, which could help you if you're running him in like Gear Raid 1, even though he's not going to be such a star there. You could use him, especially if you're like mid-game and you're hurting for options, but the AoE doesn't help you at all in the guild boss, right? But on to the last most important part. When the hero is deployed as a lord, gains focus fire effect. So what the heck is the focus fire effect? I mean, this is Pyros. The whole thing with Pyros is this focus fire effect. Faction allies, not counting healers, so no Autumn, no Dolores, no Elowyn, none of those guys, join forces to channel energy to the lord for a powerful strike, regardless of their location. So they don't have to be within his range or anything. They could be anywhere on the map, any tile. The damage of the strike increases based on the number of participating heroes, up to 700% damage. So he's going to channel energy from all the other basically DPS on the floor. I mean, you could be writing Titus or something like a defender, but no, you're running other single target infernal DPS, the Zealotus, the Amanis, the Azoths, the Nocturnes, etc. Hex, stuff like that, right? You're going to want at least 3 other infernal DPS to really make him shine with this skill, but all of them are going to join in on attack, so they're going to get more attacks out. They're going to do better damage, and then with those 3 DPS, you can get that up to 700% damage, and then you've got something significant. So basically, think of it as like a big ally attack, then with a big burst at the end. It's really something. And what's so important is they're getting their attacks off as they do this kind of ally attack under his umbrella, guise, lordship, or whatever it is. And when that happens, now it's time to refer back to Lord skill. They're getting penetration increase. So your Zealotu, I mean, no one shines more with Pyros or Twin Fiend than Zealotu, right? When that destruction command is happening for Pyros, or the meteoric whatever for Twin Fiend, she's ignoring 30% defense and magic resist. And this is the same for all your infernal DPS, everyone but your healers, right? It's so potent, right? So I said the ultimate was going to tie directly into the passive, and as we can see here, Delusional Gaze inflicts vulnerability physical damage and vulnerability magic damage, and this comes in when skilled up at 20%, so as potent as your Aeons and your Maris. That is going to happen on any target marked with the destruction command. So now it's tying right back to the ultimate, right? And it's on guild boss, it's always the guild boss. Other stuff, it's going to be whomever has the highest HP. That's who he puts this target upon, and those vulnerabilities are super duper strong, right? On top of that, there's going to be a little AoE damage burst when the mark explodes, but what's most important is getting those vulnerabilities, which is going to allow increased damage to all your other DPS, and here, not just infernal DPS, like any other DPS on the floor will benefit from those physical damage or magic damage vulnerabilities. As you can see here, you can make this last a little longer with Awakenings. More on that in a second. All in all, guys, Pyros it's just a confusing kit, right? He's quite clunky to use, and the timings are super duper precise. As we get into our demonstrations, we're gonna do 3 full guild boss runs, like I said, but first I'm gonna have to actually demonstrate what Elowyn and I are actually calling Pyros o'clock. So if you know in your quick cast, once you've triggered an ultimate, you have like that circle and then it's ticking down. If you imagine when it's about at this much, when it's at that 2 o'clock point, if you have not triggered the ultimates of the other infernal faction allies on your team before that point, they will get locked out. So we're gonna have to do a proper demonstration of Pyros o'clock, because anyone that struggled with that knows how frustrating it is when you can't trigger the ultimates then of your infernal allies. More on that in a second. Let's talk Awakenings, and then let's actually get into battle. So his Awakenings, guys, you see I brought him to A3. For these guides, I try to only bring a hero to the level of Awakening I think they really need to shine, and for Pyros, that is going to be A3. So let's just start at A1. Destruction Command increases crit rate by 20%, and that's his crit rate. So you might be thinking Twin Fiend, when he has his ultimate and he has his focus fire happening as well, he's not just giving penetration, but he's giving plus 20% crit rate and plus 20% crit damage to faction allies. That's not what this is. This is just 20% crit rate to Pyros. So it helps with his DPS, but you're really not worried about that for a long time. Then number 2, plus crit damage. So he's gonna be doing a little more damage, fine. But the A3, this is so important. So if you have soul stones, it's worth it. Unless you have like an A1 Twin Fiend, you're gonna be using Pyros in Guild Boss, and you're gonna want him A3. And that's because Delusional Gaze, like we said, is going to last for the duration of the mark, right? So however long that lasts, let me just remind you, and that comes out to 10 seconds. So you can see here, the mark lasts for 10 seconds. So you're gonna have those vulnerabilities up for only 10 seconds. You can increase that by 50% all the way up to 50 seconds if you get him A3. Delusional Gaze lasts 5 more seconds if the target is still alive at the end of destruction command. You're not gonna kill the guild boss, right? So now it's lasting a full 15 seconds. That's amazing. We'll just touch on the last two and then we'll finally get into battle. A4, he gets 5% penetration, so if you want him actually dealing damage, this certainly helps. But like I said, that's not your chief focus at the beginning or the middle, only really at the end. And then finally, A5 recovers 200 rage when target dies during destruction command's duration. This could be such a good A5 if it just didn't say when the target dies, just recovers 200 rage when destruction command ends. Amazing. However, the main place this guy shines is as a guild boss specialist, and obviously the guild boss never dies, right? So you do not get this benefit at all. If you do use him in other content, maybe using in Void Rift or something, you can use Infernal Teams there, then that's pretty cool. All in all though, if you have killed the enemy with the highest HP, the extra 200 rage is not so important, you know? And for Guild Boss, this doesn't do anything. So getting him to that A3 is awesome, and then you can kind of relax. If you ever get dupes, it's fine, but I don't think he's worth soul stones after A3, but he absolutely is until then. And keep in mind, it's gonna be very hard to naturally get Awakenings of him because he's an epic lord. He's super hard to pull. Finally, guys, let's talk gear and artifacts, and then we will head on to battle. So as you can see, there's no infographic today, and that is because it's not as simple as just making an infographic. And I guess in one way it's kind of simpler. It's basically just go for these frickin' stats I'm gonna tell you right now and do whatever it takes to get there in terms of sets and things like that, right? So basically you need that really high attack speed. So what do we say? 358 additional attack is gonna guarantee you that interval of 1.3 seconds, but you need this guy going lightning quick. As you're gonna see when we go into the battle, we can cycle this easily twice per shield. And if you've got like a rage booster, like we're gonna do one comp with Elowyn, you can even sometimes go 3 times per shield. So that's not only gonna lend to more damage for your infernal DPS, but more damage for everyone because much higher uptime on those vulnerabilities, right? So it's essential you get that high attack speed, you take full advantage of building out the extra additional attack speed from the talent, and then of course you have some rage regen as well to make sure that he is ult cycling. And that's basically it. As you get into the late game or proper late game into end game, then you can start looking at DPS builds, and I will talk about that in just one second, but this is the build the vast majority of us are going to be going for now. So instead of having an infographic, I just want to talk about 2 key pieces here and then break down the stats. So your amulet, almost certainly you're going to want a maxed out plus 16 amulet, right? With attack speed as the main stat. So 220, if you see this is a morale set, this is just one of the new premium sets. It's totally broken set. But it is a good shout if you can to get that amulet being one of these premium sets, so the red and gold set, so a Soulbound Arcana or a Ageless Wrath or Morale when that comes out, right? Now, why do I say that? These have 10% higher main stats. So the normal attack speed, mythic attack speed amulet will only go up to 200. This gets an extra 20, an extra 10%. So now this goes to 220. That extra 20 attack speed could be the difference for you. So if you can, hunt for that. But you can see there, and then we just went for some rage regen. The rest of the stuff doesn't matter. The defense bonus is nice because you don't want your Pyros to die. The attack and the crit rate is nice as well, but it kind of is what it is. All that we want is him hitting the right speeds. I'd say you want at least 370 attack speed or more to really make this guy sing. And then we're gonna start looking for rage regen. So nice transition into our next piece. So you can see I was not able to get a premium piece here with the rage regen main stat, but this is a nice one because it gets up to 60% when you max it out at plus 16, and then you get 63 additional attack from that substat roll. Really lending itself well to the builds that I'm going for. This is probably the first part of your build you can graduate from. So as you get better gear, and specifically as you get ancient pieces, then it's a lot easier to build rage regen. So why do I say that? Rage regen, as you might have noticed, never shows up as a substat on your left side gear, right? So on your breastplates and your weapons. However, when it comes to ancient pieces, that rule is out the window. You can get rage regen rolls. I don't have any ancient pieces to show you on the test server. Too bad we're not on my account, but you can get rage regen rolls here. And that makes it way easier to hit the nice rage regen marks we want. And for me, that number is going to be 70%. So to recap, I want about 370 additional attack speed minimum, and I want about 70% rage regen. Those numbers might seem really high, but like I said, they're actually not that high if those are the only two things you're really focusing on. You know, eventually you can work up towards getting some attack bonus, getting some crit rate, getting some crit damage, other fun DPS, things like that. But for now, I say just hit those two numbers and then try to make sure you have some semblance of tankiness. So you can see I am running 1 HP bonus piece here. There's no attack speed on it, no rage regen on it, but I already had hit my marks. And this is just to make sure, hey, some flat attack, some HP bonus, some defense bonus. This is something that typically might be on a tank, but that's going to allow him to survive. From my testing, it seems like he needs at least 18,000 HP to survive with a decent healer in Nightmare 4, so that's what we went for. The rest is just, once you've hit those marks, once you've hit your 18,000 HP, but most importantly, your 370 plus attack speed and your 70% rage regen, then you're good to go. And it is very much worth noting, if you think 70% rage regen is really high, when I'm on the test server, guys, I don't do faction trials on the test server. This is just for testing stuff. So I have no additional stats. On my main account, I have like 26.5% rage regen, right? So that would lower that threshold to 53.5% rage regen that I need to make this same build that I have on my Pyros here on the test server work. And that is something you guys can absolutely consider, and it does make it a bit easier. Additionally, I think I have 16 attack speed that I get from the Pantheon. That also can help make your build a bit easier. Unfortunately, when you go to gear and you click that exclamation point, it does not say Pantheon. However, I'm speaking with the devs, and I'm highly encouraging them to add an extra column so you can see your Pantheon bonus. Just make everything easier for everyone. Just a nice little quality of life thing, and they are so good at the quality of life improvements, so I do expect it to one day come, hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, those are the marks I'm going to say to hit, and then you go for some damage. So then we said, okay, let's go for some attack. You can see here, there's an attack bonus roll. What do we get over here? There's a little attack bonus, crit rate, crit damage. All in all, I got 47.5% crit rate. If you remember from my A1, I'm getting another 20% crit rate during his ultimate. So like 2/3 of the time he's going to crit. The attack is whatever. It's acceptable, I guess, because for Guild Boss, he does not have the highest defense, so we will get a little bit of damage, but that is very much the afterthought. Eventually, and we'll briefly talk about this now and we can finally head into battle, eventually you're going to want this guy in a Wisdom set, and then after that a Soulbound Arcana set. Because it's such a low cost on the ult, because he's ult cycling so quickly, you're going to have a very, very, very high uptime on that 35% damage increase from the Wisdom set, or as it builds very quickly over a battle, 50% permanent increase when you do 5 triggers of the ult with your Soulbound Arcana. That's something you're going to look for. You could easily get him into a Warlord set, especially if you had some Ancient pieces. Instead of the 75 additional attack speed, it'd be 30, but you can make up for some additional attack speed. Maybe you get some with an Ancient piece. You can also can't get attack speed on breastplates unless they're Ancient. Maybe eventually you have some of those good gear, some of that good gear, maybe some rage regen and attack speed, some rage regen here. Next thing you know, you have a decent DPS build, but it's going to take a long time. For now, I think this is what the vast majority of us are going to work with. Oh, and of course, I'm just excited to get into battle. I was clicking out, but we do have to talk about Artifact, and this is quite easy because I put out my greed guide yesterday. I said put the Nightmare Samsara on him. For Pyros, no brainer, this is the best you can use on him. He doesn't have any slows or anything like that, so Book of Distortion shouldn't even be a consideration. Not like you're going to slow the guild boss anyway. The Nightmare Samsara restores 7.5% rage when max promo, and I highly suggest you invest in this and you get its max promo. Just a great artifact in general. It's going to 7.5% rage every 5 attacks, right? So if we get him with the talent kicking in and all that stuff, the build I've been describing, get him at least at that 1.2 second interval, you're getting 5 attacks every 6 seconds. So every 24 seconds will be 20 attacks. So basically every 24 seconds, you're getting a 30% additional rage, right? That is nuts. And this is really as good as it's going to get for him. All right, finally, we are off and on to battle. First things first, I've got to be sure we all have a firm understanding of Pyros o'clock, so shout out again to Alarl. Let's head into Nightmare 4. We'll be hanging out here for a long time, but let's just do a very quick demonstration. So let's pick Pyros and then 2 other Infernal DPS that I think their ults are going to charge up quickly. We might as well put a healer down too, just in case we die during the experiment. That won't be very fun. So there goes Pyros. Let's put Zeala 2 here. Let's put Hex here. It really doesn't matter. Basically, we're going to wait for all these ults to load up. You'll see Pyros with that nice initial cost and the low ult cost in general. He's got his rage max out real quick. There goes Zeala 2, and here comes Hex. So once we get Hex loaded up, we're going to keep it on 1x, obviously. We're going to talk about the clock. So as you guys can see here, I was talking about the quick cast ultimates, right? We have this little circle around our character avatars, right? We can treat that as the clock. So the top right here is going to be 12. This right here is going to be 3 o'clock. So we got about 1 o'clock here, 2 o'clock here. 2 o'clock, this is going to be Pyros o'clock. So once we trigger Pyros, we can trigger Zeal 2 up until that point. Same with Hex, up until that point. If we trigger them after, they will get locked out. Anyone that's used Pyros before knows this feeling of your infernal DPS getting locked out. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna trigger Zeal 2 before 2 o'clock, before Pyros o'clock, Hex after, and you will really get to see what that lockout looks like. So let's go with Pyros. You can see we're about 1 o'clock now. Let's wait for it. So that's about 2 o'clock. I can hit Zeal 2. Now let's wait a little longer. Try for Hex. Oh no, we're locked out of Hex. All right, so we missed that sweet spot. So you really want to, a lot of times, if you want to be safe and with certain comps, you can just trigger your DPS. You can trigger their ults before Pyros to just guarantee there's no issue. However, as you get into more advanced team comps, as you're going to see in the Elowyn comp, we're going to run very shortly, the timings are so tight, you actually do have to trigger Pyros first. So it is essential that you get a firm grasp on this little threshold, these 2 hours on his clock of moments at which you can trigger your DPS ults. So let's get out of here and let's actually hop into a battle. We might as well start off with that Elowyn comp. This is going to be one of your more advanced teams, and then you're going to be able to do some really cool stuff, really cool DPS, because Elowyn is such an amazing rage regenerator. On to our first battle, finally. So let's get in there and let's check out the team comp we're running. Nice Infernal team on top. Obviously, Pyros is the Lord. We have 3 Infernal DPS. As I said, that's what you're gonna want to get the max potential out of his ultimate, out of that focus fire. We've got Hex, we've got Setrum, we've got Sealatu, and of course Dolores. Dolores will be doing Dolores-y things. Finally, we've got Elowyn. Elowyn, this is gonna turn into like a mini Elowyn showcase. We're gonna do one version of this comp with her, another version with Vortex, and the difference she makes just from her rage boosting is outrageous. Especially, she's got an incredible synergy with Pyros. She allows him to cycle that ult an incredible amount of time. So if you've got Elowyn and you don't have Pyros, you're about to get Pyros from the fusion, get excited. It is nuts. Finally, we're bringing Estrid. I just like Estrid, and she's going to apply some defense down, which will be really valuable, just making sure we get enough DPS out. We would anyway, but if you can bring someone else, you might as well. I'm not going to run like a full team or anything because I really want to let these guys shine. Also, if you want to see the builds, I'll show those all off at the end of the video. But for now, I want to focus on the mechanics, the techniques, and really breaking down how this works. Let's hop into battle and let's do this thing. So, very first thing we can do, there's going to be a lot of 1x here, guys. The timings are particular. Very first thing we can do is get Pyros down. I don't have any invigoration or anything, so we can just start getting people down as we see fit. There's not so much technical stuff that's going to go into the actual placements beyond making sure they're placed in the right slots. All right, everyone is set, and you're going to see Pyros is almost ready to rumble. There we go. We can already trigger his first ult. If you saw my Guild Boss guide I put out a couple days ago, you saw I like to trigger Hex and Sealatu a bit early, particularly Sealatu, to make sure their ults line up. Hex actually is the same as Sealatu, except my Hex in that guide was not max skilled, but they got 35 seconds, so it's great to let that line up really nicely. However, here, not necessary, because we'd rather have that line up with when they do their ultimate over the shield and then into the vulnerable state of the dragon. We want it to line up that they're going to do one ultimate for 2 ultimates of Pyros to really get maximum damage. You'll see about that in a second. So you can see I was buying time there because we just have to wait for this next last meteorite strike. The best time to do it with Setrum is going to be right around the halfway mark, so you can do it by that little slash. Trigger, and then Pyros, you're going to want to trigger him right about at the end of the word impact. And then get ready, because it's Pyros o'clock. You've got to trigger Sealatu and Hex. So let's wait. Trigger, there's Sealatu, there's Hex, there's Dolores. Just got Hex off in time. And you're going to see, guys, look for these glowing pink circles underneath. That means they're benefiting from the penetration increase from the destruction command. They're also participating in the focus fire. You can see they're all charging up attacks, and they're going to do a big allied attack together. So watch for that animation. Watch that shield just disappear. Boom. Kaplat. There they go. Down they go. You got to stay focused because already it's almost time to trigger Pyros again. Between that shield and the next shield, we're going to trigger him 3 more times, which is just nuts. The cycling is crazy, and Elowyn really makes that possible. So let's stay focused here. I'm going to have to trigger him as soon as I possibly can. And also, something I was not able to do in my Guild Boss guide because I don't have someone like Elowyn, or also Hollow would work really well. With my team on my main account, I cannot cycle Dolores 2 times, 2 ultimates for every shield. However, with Elowyn, it is easy peasy. So let's cycle Pyros there. We're already going to be able to do him twice more before the next phase. And let's get ready with Dolores as well. You can see here, trigger. And then just a general tip, like I said in my guide, never forget to use your healers because your guys might die. So let's get ready now. Let everyone load up. Now let's heal up with Elowyn a bit. And Pyros is almost ready to go. Pretty amazing stuff. So let's go. Let's start hammering this thing. There we have it. And now we can get settled in. It's going to be the same procedure. We will have to wait slightly longer because it's going to take Pyros time to build up. So I'll show you what that looks like. Here it comes. All right, so you can see it looks like kind of dire, right? We can trigger towards the very end, we trigger Setrum. However, this thing builds up so quick, especially with Elowyn, it's a non-issue. So let that go. We're going to keep it on 1x. Obviously now trigger, get it in that window, trigger, trigger, trigger. I would also say you don't have to be so freaked out and sporadic when you get that trigger. Let me pause it for 1 second here. When you get that trigger on Dolores, because she's not included in that focus fire. Remember, it excludes infernal healers. So watch, guys, they're loading up. I wanted to pause it because I want you to see, looks like they've got a big lead. Look at our shield, but now watch the big boom. The shield is donezo. It is crazy. If you use Pyros right, that big community ally attack damage with the buffs he's putting out, with the vulnerability debuffs he's putting out on the boss, it is crazy. So what was I talking about getting 2 Pyros ults for every 1 Seal 2 and Hex? Well, let's demonstrate that now. I've already done it once, but I can really show you it now. So look, they still have, what is this? A bit more, maybe 30%, maybe 25% left on their ult nearly. If we can trigger Pyros towards the very end of it, like we're about to, let's hammer away on that. Look at that. He's gonna get going and we're gonna get the shot off during their ult, which means boom, it was during their top damage. Those are crazy numbers, guys. We still have a whole other shield to take down. Really incredible if you're able to cycle like that. Of course, that is only possible, or at least from my testing, it's only possible with a rage booster like Elowyn or like Hollow. Elowyn is going to be the best for it. You could also bring Laurel. That would be something to do. It would make for an incredibly complicated run though, and that is a story for another day. Let's already trigger Dolores again, and now we're not going to be able to get another bonus one off before the next shield, so it is kind of relaxing. We can sit back and just enjoy ourselves, watch the damage tick up. All right, here we go. Here's the second Infernal Roar. Everyone's getting loaded up now, and now this one we can do exactly like we did the first one with the perfect timing, right? Keep it on 1x here. Let's make sure I don't mess this up. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So right about the halfway point, let's wait a second. Here we go for Setrum, and now right at the end of the impact, now trigger, trigger. See, Dolores is a bit late, but don't worry. Dolores' ult is only 22 seconds, whereas with Setrum, it's always hard just because he's hard to line up. But of course, Hex and Seal 2 are 35 seconds, so it will still line up fully. And we really nailed it. Let's do Estrid here, and look at that shield just melt away. With our little baby comp here, granted we have excellent DPS, however, with like not even a full team, we are cruising. Let's get ready again to try to get another ult off at the end of, from Pyros at the end of Seal 2 and Hex, and we did do it. Excellent. So now we can kind of settle in. We've got a minute left here. Look at that, nice uptimes on the vulnerability, a big smash there. Some really nice damage, and we are going to get our 4th chest. We're going to get that 20k blood. Let's focus up for a second. Now what we do, guys, is we're going to try to line everyone up for one last big smash, okay? So you can see Dolores is almost ready to go, but Pyros is right down there. But look at these other guys, 85, 86, 88, 89. Setrum is ready. Let's go. Let's trigger Setrum. Let's trigger Pyros right at their 96 mark is a good benchmark. Let's hammer away. Hammer away. I think I just got Hex off in time. There we go, and there's Seal 2, there's Estrid, and look at that, we should get some big damage. That's gonna line up perfectly with like that 35 seconds left to get a full ult, and we even still might be able to get one more Pyros ult out. So we should see some pretty solid damage from our little team here. Let's get Elowyn up before anyone dies. I should have healed earlier, if I'm being honest. We might as well place this little Wood Elf as well. There's a big hit, but we should be okay. Let's wait and look. We're gonna get one more Pyros ult off. Hopefully he charges up in time to line up with Hex and Seal 2. Let's see. Let's watch for that animation. We got the Taga zigging. Can we get one more big hit? Ah, we just missed it. However, damage is looking mighty fine. Let's check out. Let's see what we had. And there you go. We just got that 20k blood chest. There is some variability in this just in terms of how hard the timing is. So I think if we go through, you can see my previous runs from the day. This is the best comp I have. I think we've gotten all the way to like the 22, 23. No, they're just showing all the fights I've done the whole day. But you can see, here's the most recent damage. 51 million from Seal 2, 42 million from Hex, 19 million from Setrum. Really only 3 DPS. Pyros, with this build, is just kind of hanging out. He's just doing his thing. 4.2 million. He is there to empower everyone else. Estrid, in her whatever build that you'll see at the very end, she was just there for the defense down. But that 51 million from Seal 2, my Seal 2 cannot do that right now. On my account, my Seal 2 is doing about 33 million damage, and my Seal 2 has much better gear than this build. However, I don't have Pyros, and that really is the difference. Pyros really makes Seal 2 sing. Now for a more realistic comp for a lot of people that do not have Elowyn, let's get our boy Vortex in here and let's try this thing out. So guys, without that crazy rage boosting from Elowyn, we are not gonna be able to hit those same DPS numbers, obviously, and we are not gonna be able to Definitely not going to be able to cycle ultimates as aggressively as we were before. However, I do think this is a far more realistic comp. Elowyn obviously is super duper rare. So to start, it's basically the same thing. Let's get everyone out and deployed. Again, for me, the order really doesn't matter right now because we're not running invigoration or anything like that. But that is worth noting. You know, when you hit those numbers, we got that chest with this. You're going to see the gear at the end, not this special gear or anything like that at all. And we did that with no invig, nothing special, you know, just it is crazy. If you use Pyros right, he is crazy. All right, we already can trigger him there. And I should say we are going to do that early trigger like you saw in my guild boss guide on Synergies and actually on Hex, since this Hex is skilled up. Mine is not. We're going to go for about that 429, 430 mark, and that's because we have no Pantheon here. I haven't built out any Pantheon, as you saw, so we're hurting on Rage Regen. So we actually need to be a little earlier than I normally would do it, just to make sure we're lining up well on the third shield. And we are already thinking that far ahead, and you've got to be if you want to be strategic and you know, do the best you possibly can. So let's trigger. These guys are good to go. Now we can kind of focus in. Here comes the second Infernal Roar. And actually what we're going to do, we're going to have to trigger a bit earlier on Setram as well, because we're not going to have the same rage cycling at all. So what I like to do with Setram, so for those guys, it was like the 429, 430 mark. What I like to do with Setram is the second Meteorite Strike bar appears, that's when I'm going to trigger him. So let's wait. There you go. Meteorite Impact, excuse me. So there's Setram. Let's see. Did I get him off? I might have double clicked. Yes, there's Setram. And then right at the word Meteorite, that's a good time for Pyros when you're doing those early triggers. We can already go Dolores now because everyone else is ready. With Estrid, not that she matters, I will just do it when the shield comes up. And you'll see, once Pyros gets that hit, basically one-shot the shield, easy peasy. Don't forget your heals again. And now, guys, we kind of just sit back and do the same thing for the next two shields. The only thing to consider, basically, is your timings when people come up. You're not going to be able to do as early on as we did with Seala 2 and Hex and Setram. We're just going to kind of have to do them as they come up. Pyros, we will still be able to 2-to-1 cycle, so that's not a problem, but we won't be able to do much more than that. And obviously, we will not be 2-to-1 cycling with Dolores. And remember to do your heals, because I forget that all the time. So very quick. Good timing with Pyros there. Now we wait. And if you remember, we were about we're about here when we triggered Seala 2 and Hex. We're much further away now, right? We don't have that rage boost. We can't afford to do that. And we certainly were not able to get the 2 Pyros ults for 1 ult of Hex and Seala 2 and get that huge benefit. But we wait, we do our best. As soon as these guys pop up, we are gonna trigger them. So trigger. We have to wait for Setram before we do Pyros. That's super important. Otherwise he'll get locked out. So pretty nice on Setram there. And now we can trigger. Very nice. Let's trigger Dolores. So we'll see, still pretty solid damage, but it's a totally different ball game, right? Without that crazy ult cycling, you're not going to see the huge numbers. But look at what Pyros is enabling this tiny little team to do. And I know people are going to say you have crazy S tier DPS, but once you see the gear, this is kind of what it is. And if you really want to get full advantage of Pyros, he's kind of like a late game, end game hero. You're going to have to use some S tier DPS, and certainly you're going to have to use a lot of infernal DPS allies to get his maximum benefit. So we went for the trigger on him again there. A little bit more damage. Let's wait for this Infernal Roar. Now let's trigger Vortex. And now the third shield, like I said, we were already thinking ahead to the third shield. This is when it's going to get hairy. You can see we're only at 70% and 78% on Seala 2 and Hex respectively. We're going to play the cards we're dealt, right? I did my best to plan this out, so let's see. Hex is ready. We can trigger him. Here comes Seala 2. She's good to go as well. And actually this lines up pretty well because keep in mind, these guys have the very long 35-second thing. So my timing did work. There's Setram, there's Pyros, there's Dolores. Let's crack this third shield. It's gonna be a lot tighter, but you'll see once there's the ally attack revving up, there's Estrid, and look, they all shoot towards it. Crazy. That gave us the lead, and once you have the lead in these kind of things, as long as Dolores is active, you're not going to relinquish it. Down it goes, and we took down all 3 shields with this team with Vortex instead of Elowyn. I was pretty impressed by this team being able to do it. I didn't know they'd be able to do it for sure, but they did. So now we can kind of do the same thing like we did before. We're down to our last minute. It's going to be very hard to line up the end, but we'll do our best. We're just going to trigger Pyros immediately. He should be able to come back up one more time. And now we're just going to kind of wait for our DPS to load up and wait for Dolores. It is what it is. We're not going to get to that 20k, but you can see still super respectable, and this is without Elowyn. And that's really strongly on the back of Pyros. You'll see again, our Seala 2 damage is much higher than you would normally expect. We can already trigger. This ult only lasts 22 seconds from Dolores. And what I'll tell you guys now, because we're still 18%, 22%, 15% away, I'm already going to trigger Pyros. I don't mind them getting locked out. because it's not like we were going to have that much time to trigger their ult already. The clock is ticking down. We just want to eke out any extra damage we can. Let's see. Oh, so the lockout, it actually timed out perfectly. No longer locked out. We should be able to get a touch more damage. Let's just see. Can we break that 18k? We can. All in all, pretty happy with that result. Let's definitely check out those stats and see how we did. But you can see, you don't need Elowyn to make it happen, but boy, was that synergy amazing between the two of them. If we've lined up a few more things, like I told you, we got 23k earlier with like that incomplete team, but just riding that Pyros and Elowyn synergy. So let's see what we got here. 18.4, really quite respectable. You can see this is a 20k chest if we just brought 1 or 2 more units like we could have. And look at that, nearly a tie between Zealot2 and Hex. And there's another great example. You can see this Zealot2 is still doing 5 million more damage without 5 million more damage than my Zealot2, even though my Zealot2 is also fully skilled and way better built, and A1. But still, this one is doing 5 million more, and that is 100% on the back of Pyros, and Pyros just being crazy. Hex as well, doing an excellent job. And you can see having Elowyn brought Zealot2 from 38 mil to 51 mil, so that is just tremendous. All in all, pretty good stuff. So for this final battle, we are not going to feature Pyros in a typical way. I'm not going to deploy him because I want to show you how much these numbers drop, particularly the numbers from like Hex and Zealot2 especially. So what we're going to do, we're going to head into this fight. One of these guys is going to have to go down. So I guess let's bring Setram down. Let's put Nocturne into the fight. Where are you hiding out, buddy? There he is. And this one I will fast forward through just so you can see the numbers at the end. But just to tell you what I'm going to do right now, we are not going to deploy Pyros. We're just going to use him as an Infernal Lord, so just for his little 10% bonus he gives everyone, but we're not going to use him. And so for anyone that thinks like, oh, Pyros doesn't need to be on the field, he's not that important, his focus fire's not that good, the destruction command's not that good, well, you're about to see. Also, guys, the damage will go down because we're not going to have the vulnerabilities. We could bring someone like Mari or Aeon, but then I think it's kind of messing up the experiment. This is just to show you, we're going to just compare if we deploy Pyros or if we deploy an A5 juiced up Nocturne. Let's get into it. So I'll talk through the initial placements and then we'll fast forward through to the end. Nocturne is also a 35-second interval, so that can line up quite nicely. But let's just start getting people down. We no longer need Pyros, so we can put Nocturne in his slot. But we need him, we're just not going to use him for the sake of proving a point. Here comes Dolores. Here comes our boy Vortex, and then here comes Estrid. So I guess I'll just pick this up right about that 430 mark. I'll trigger that Zealot2, I'll trigger that Hex, I'll trigger that Nocturne. You'll see Nocturne has less initial cost, so we'll have to wait slightly on him. But we'll get all that going, and then I'll start fast forwarding, and we'll go to the end. We'll see what happens. We'll see those nice, pretty numbers, and then we'll see what kind of DPS we put out. So here we go. Right about there, 31, 30. Let's go for a trigger. Let's go for a trigger. Let's go 2x. We might as well wait for Nocturne. All right, guys, I'll check back in with y'all in a second. All right, guys, coming up on that last shields, just triggered Setram. There goes Dolores. It's gonna be pretty close. For my testing, sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. Very much articulates the difference of Pyros. Let's see, are we gonna get it? It's neck and neck. Come on, guys, come on, guys. We still got Dolores up. All right, we just got it, very nice. But look at that, the blood is a lot less. You can really see the difference that it makes. And I'll take this time while we wait for the ults to line up and we wait to get our heal from Vortex. If you're wondering why it's not such a problem that I'm triggering everyone else a decent bit before Dolores, with Guild Boss, you should really think of your ult durations, right? So Dolores' ult is only 22 seconds. These other guys are 35 seconds. So we're not actually at some tremendous disadvantage by doing them first. We have 13 seconds that they wouldn't have lined up anyway, so might as well get them going early so we can cycle them more later on. All right, we are coming up towards that 22 seconds though. So the second these guys are ready, and there's that 20 seconds, so we might as well trigger Dolores now. And now we just wait. We'll get our last few triggers off. And you can see, guys, the blood isn't bad, but it's not on the level it was at before. Get a few more triggers, and guys, Pyros is just freaking good. This is an A5 Nocturne. For anyone not familiar with A5 Nocturne, I might have to make a guide on him at some point. He's a totally different hero, man. He is ridiculous at A5. Look at that, we did break 17k, so it's not nothing, but a nice chunk less, or about 1,500 blood less than our than our run with Vortex, right? and then a nice chunk less than with Elowyn. Look at that, 17.1k. So I think it was like about 38 million for Hex and Seal 2 as well. Let's see what that looks like here. Obviously, a lot of this damage is being made up for because I'm sure those guys have lost a lot of damage, but of course Nocturne's going to do a pretty good job himself. Look at that. And that's what I'm talking about. So this Seal 2, even with the Lord bonus from that 10% from Pyros, is still 4 million less than mine, even though mine has no Lord bonus at all, right? And having Pyros out there makes an enormous difference. Here comes Hex at 27, way below my Hex. My Hex is over 40 million. So I'm just, not to talk about my own team, but just to use an example of what having Pyros on the field and not on the field does, right? Then Setram pretty similar, and then Nocturne doing a solid job at 18. Nocturne probably was in the worst gear of this bunch, but he's still A5 and he's still fully skilled and he's still super duper good. And as you're gonna see as we go into builds right now, he's in a plus 25 fully pro mode tier Starlight. So probably a good moment now, actually. Let's just go through our squad and show everyone quickly, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. What a marathon this has been, though, guys. Not easy to do these videos, so if you appreciate it, please let me know. I know this one, as I'm still filming it, I know this one's going to be tremendously long, so thank you if you stuck with me up until this point. I'm going to go very quickly, just click through gear. You guys can pause it as you see fit. And if you want to do the arithmetic on the right side, you can get a sense, but you can see your Broken Set and Warlord for Setram onto Hex. We did get a Soulbound Arcana, but my gear on Test Server is not very good. That really is something I might end up making a video about. There's a reason for that, and it's very frustrating. Ooh, I should show you Artifact here, plus 25 Nether, plus 25 Nether. They're in good stuff, guys. They're in good stuff. Plus 25 Crystal of Vileness. I actually tested this alongside a maxed out signature artifact of Zeal 2 I had, and this does better. I think, just a quick aside, you need a full team putting out Burning to really get a benefit from that. Let's show her gear as well. We got Ageless Wrath. She probably took our best gear. I don't know. Another Warlord set there. Finally, Nocturne for the DPS. And I guess we'll show Estrid. There you go. Maxed out tier Starlight. I mean, that's no joke. Broken Set here, and we went Warlord again. Kind of all the gear I have is Warlord. They sent me in the mail. A lot of it didn't roll well, but it is what it is. Now let's go to Estrid, and then we'll just... you already saw Pyros, obviously, so let's just go to Estrid. She's in just a random set. I did put her in Morale just to give her 4% bonus damage boost. More on the new sets soon. I'm just waiting till they're closer to coming into the game. And then, of course, Warlord as well. So that helped our whole team. For her, we were running her in a Watchguard's Ambition. I just want to increase the frequency of her basic attacks to increase the frequency of defense down. Here's our Vortex. He's in an Orb of Euphoria, maxed out, of course. And then there you go, there you go, there you go. A little Whirlwind set. Them are the stats. Finally, Elowyn, maybe the girl of the hour. Let's pull her up, and then we can wrap this bad boy up. All in all, though, I think Pyros, I really think I proved my point. This guy is nuts, and I totally get why some people have been struggling to use him. So there's our Elowyn. She's actually not in an orb. I took it out between runs to make sure it was on Vortex. But yeah, it really is something. What Pyros can contribute to your team is significant, and that's why I've been so thirsty for him, and I'm so excited that he's coming home. If we're talking synergies, Elowyn is a beautiful synergy for him. Aside from that, you just want to surround him with Infernal DPS. It really takes 3 for him to absolutely shine. Guys, I've been fastidious. This has been an absolute marathon. If you like it, like it. If you want to comment, get in those comments. Share it with your mother. I'll see you in the next one.
Fastidious.